in Brich Shmei, yes. It's Aramaic.
In the Kaddish.
Right. Slow so now you write Saskabel, Tsalos, and Avoso. So Salah is the same as Tefillah is the same as Tefillah. Okay. So Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Chisda, Yaakov said in the name of Rav Chisda. So Amos Matzli, the top beginning of the line, third line. Amos Matzli, when do you say Tefillah Saderech? Amar Rav Yaakov, Amar Rav Chisda. Yaakov said in the name of Rav Chisda, Mishash Mahalach Baderech.
What's this tiny little aleph or whatever?
I will explain in a moment. That's a very good question, Joe. I'm glad you asked it. You only ask good questions, Yassel. So if you look at the regular Gemara, there's a little aleph. A reference note. From the time that you go along the way. In other words, from you start traveling, you do this. And ad kama, how much do you say Tefillah Saderach for the moment you begin to travel? Shulchan Aruch explains this means when you leave the city limits as defined in the laws of Eruvin. When you get 70 2/3 amot, approximately 106 feet, 107 feet from the last house in the town. So if you're in New York City, you don't say Tefillah Saderach, you could be stuck in traffic for 2 hours, but you never leave the city limits. But if you live in a small town, like one of the small towns. Well, Long Meadow, yeah, but the Long Meadow was part of Greater Springfield. But when you finally, let's say you're traveling on the 90, so when you finally get out past Chicopee or something, and there's fields on the sides and empty land, that's where you say the Tefillah Saderach. And Ad Kama, how much do you have to travel?
So you don't say it until you leave your house.
Right, you say it only when you're going on a journey outside the city. Ad Kama, until how far? Amar Reb Yaakov, Amar Rav Chisda, Ad Parsa. Reb Yaakov said in the name of Rav Chisda, Ad Parsa, until 1 parsa from 1 parsa, which a parsa is 4 mil. A mil is 2,000 amot. 2,000 amot is approximately 3,020 feet. So it's just under a kilometer. So a parsa is 4 kilometers, about 2.4 miles. So if you travel less than 2.4 miles from your house.
Parsa is in miles?
Those days, if you're carrying a heavy pack, about a 72-minute journey. But so if you're going more than 2.4 miles from the end of your village or your city, you say Tefillah Saderach. That is called a journey. Now, I'm going to focus on the page of the Gemara that we're using, because it's not on the Sephira. See, can you see here, there's a little aleph and a little bet in the text. Now I'm showing it to those who are watching it. So that little aleph there, and that little bet there, it references the square, they're square alphabet letters. It references the square alphabet letters here on the side in something called Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah, the well of judgment, the candle of the mitzvah. And what the Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah is it references where in the codes of Jewish law these matters are discussed. So here he references, as you see, the Torah and the Shulchan Aruch, chapter 110, where the laws of Tefillah Saderach are discussst.
So he must reference to something on the side.
Yes, I look on the side. See where it says Ein Mishpat Ner Mitzvah? On the out. Right. So you see there. So let me show you how it works. Do you see Aleph Bet?
Yes.
So that's a reference to Torah, the Torah, and the Shulchan Aruch, Orach Chaim, the laws of daily life, Siman Kuf Yud, chapter 110, Sif Zayin, paragraph 7. And if you look there, it discusses this law. Now, I should make an interesting point about that one of the secondary uses of these is that when you have multiple opinions in the Talmud and you see those little square letters, you know that the halacha follows that opinion, that the law follows that opinion.
So I'm looking at it and I see Aleph, Bet, and then something that I can't read because it's like in code.
What? So it says Tor.
Where do you see Tur?
Look on the side of the Nishmat Ner Mitzvah, under the little samach.
Under the little.
Look, Aleph Bet. You see?
What is it? Right after there is.
It says
word.
Tor. It's in Rashi script. Tor, Arba Turim.
I don't see a resh there for the life of me.
There's a resh. Trust me.
I see Tov Tet Vav.
There should be a resh there.
Oh, you see, that's the problem. You know it is already.
No, so it must be missing from there. And Shinayim means Shulchan Aruch. Orach Chaim, that's the first section, the laws of daily life, Siman Kuf Yod, chapter 110, which is at the end of the laws of prayer. Sif Zion, paragraph 7. So the cheat sheet aspect of this is that if you see the little square letter but where there's multiple opinions, you know the halacha follows the opinion that gets the little square letters.
I know. So where do you find this source that you're supposed to look up?
So you open up a Shulchan Aruch and you turn to chapter 110. Yeah, that's what Shinayim means, Shulchan Aruch. And sometimes it quotes the Rambam also.
And now you have to go to what?
Now you have to go to the Code of Jewish Law, open it up, and you'll see how the halacha.
You mean the Rambam's?
No, I mean Shulchan Aruch. Sometimes when it says Mem Yud Yud Maimon, that's a reference to the Mishnah Torah. So it's very useful if you want to understand how a law develops from the Gemara, because there's a lot of discussion between the Gemara and the Halakha. You want to understand how the law develops. So, for example, the premise that you have to wait till you leave the city limits as defined by the Shabbos law is in the Shulchan Aruch. It's not here in the Gemara. Now, ask the Gemara v'heichi matzli law. How does one pray this tefillah saderech? Rav Chisda Amar Ma'umad. Rav Chisda says you pray it standing up. Rav Shesha says afilu mahalech, even while you're riding or walking or traveling and so on. In what form does one pray this? Rav Chisda says standing. Rav Shesha says even walking. And if you'll take a look, you see the little gimel that tells you that the halach is like Rav Shesha's. But nevertheless, as I mentioned in the past, some people are makpid to stand up even though you don't have to. And that's exactly what happened to Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshes, who argued about this. So Rav Chisda and Rav Sheshes, Havo, they were ka'ozli going along, but orcha on the way. Come Rav Chisda v'kamatzli. Rav Chisda stood up and prayed Tfilas Haderech. He stopped what he was doing, he got out of the wagon and stood up and said Tfilas Haderech. Omale Rav Sheshes l'shame. Rav Sheshes said to his attendant, because Rav Sheshes was blind, so he needed his attendant to tell him what to do. My ka'avid Rav Chisda, what is Rav Chisda doing? Omale says, he stopped and stood up, umatzli, and he's praying. Omale, even though I hold, you don't have to stop and stand up for Tfilas Haderech. Just say it as you tootle along in your wagon. Ukmon nami lididi. Let us also stand up, ba'atzli, and I will pray. Miyos tov tikri raf. You can be good, don't be called bad. In other words, even though I don't hold, you have to. If he already stopped to stand up to pray, I can do it too. It's okay to be better than you have to.
Out of respect for the blind rabbi.
No, for the other one, for Rav Chisda. The blind rabbi is the one who says, and that's the halacha. You don't have to stand up.
The blind one did not know that.
But like I said, when we used to travel, when I was a kid, my father always stopped after the first toll booth, if you remember what those are, and there was always a little lay-by where the toll attendants parked, and he would stop, stand up, and say Tfilas Haderech. And he did so because the Lubavitcher Rebbe only left Brooklyn twice in his whole leadership. I mean, I think he was in a hospital in Manhattan at some point, but he never left the city of. Nope. He left the city of New York twice, both times to visit the camps, the kids' camps in the mountains. And yeah, originally it was in Swan Lake, if you remember where that is. So when the Rebbe, when they left the city limits after the first toll, I think on the Hutchinson Parkway, there used to be a 25-cent toll there. The Rebbe asked the driver to stop, and he got out and he stood up and he did Tfilas Haderech. Since that happened in 1955, so the old timers who were around then, the old Hasidim, they always made a point of stopping to stand up and say Tfilas Haderech. But it's not the Rebbe, really. The source is in this Gemara that if you can, it's a good thing to do, but you don't have to. Okay. Now the Gemara is going to address a new problem. What is the difference between Havinenu, which is, you say, which is this middle condensed version of the 13 brachot of the middle of Shemona Esrei, and the Tefillah Ktsar? Remember that short prayer you say where you're in a dangerous or uncomfortable place and you can't do the whole Shemona Esrei.
There's another sign there. Looks like a star or something.
Well, so that the star in the Gemara, and I will show you, where there's a star, that is a reference to something called, see the star?
Yeah.
I'm showing it to the people on the Zoom. Right, so the star is a reference to something called Mesoras Hashas on the inner margin, see? Mesoras Hashas, and on the inner margin, by the binding Yosel. And there you'll see it says in parentheses, Beis Kuf Ayin Aleph ... That means you decipher it, Baba Kama, Tractate Baba Kama, page 71, side 2, because every page in Gemara has 2 sides. So what dot means one side 1, and 2 dots means side 2. So again, you have a cryptic reference, and what the Mesoras Hashas does, what the stars do, is they show us where else in the Gemara this idea is discussed. Because sometimes the Gemara discusses something more extensively in one place than the other, so you want to go look it up. So that helps us with the and there's another thing called Torah Or in between the Gemara column and the Rashi column, and that tells you where in Tanakh a pasuk is written.
Is this taught separately as?
No, when we started learning Gemara, our teachers showed us this and showed us how to find another Gemara, showed us how to find where in the Tanakh it is. No, my grandfather, blessed memory, knew the whole Tanakh by heart, so he never needed to look at this. Yes, literally. So Amos and Yeshayahu have the same pasuk, but there's a difference in Trup. So I once quoted him a pasuk, and he says, was that the one from Amos or the one from Yeshayahu? And he already, the last 2 years of his life, he suffered from dementia, and and he was already quite far advanced in his dementia, and he still asked me that question.
What's the definition of dementia?
It means your brain begins to go.
Well, my brain is obviously going because short memory is.
Yeah, but that happens to all old people. Dementia, no, he remembered things from the past well. But my point is, one of the interesting things is they say that people who use their brains all the time, their brain figures out ways around dementia until it finally gets too bad. So it was only the very end of his life. He may have had the issues before, because he had some heart issues. And
how old was he at that time?
Oh, he was already 90.
He was 90?
Yeah. He passed away. He was like 92 when he passed away. So until he was 90, he was sharp as a tack,
You know what I'm
He didn't
saying?
lose a step till he was
Breaking
90.
news.
But I just want to say that the reason I mention this is that he never looked at the Torah Or, because whenever we had a pasuk in the Gemara, and usually the Gemara quotes a fragment of a pasuk, he would rattle off the whole pasuk by heart. And the story is that when he was young, he was a somewhat weak child. He was short and skinny,
Yeah.
And so they didn't usually because they lived in a small village. They were in the lumber business. Used to send the kids away 10, 11 years old. But his father didn't send him away to yeshiva till he was 15 because he was short and skinny. They were worried about him. So he studied on his own. So he studied Tanakh. And he studied a lot more Tanakh than they usually did in yeshivas in Hungary. So he studied Tanakh with the commentaries and studied it over and over. So by the time, because that's what he could study on his own. So by the time he was 14, 15, he knew the whole Tanakh by heart and he never forgot it.
So it just goes to show you that this little skinny, weak kid has an unusual brain even then.
Yeah, well, in general, he had an unusual brain, but
He
remember,
memorizing
remember, Europe was full of Jewish children who had incredible brains and memories. A lot of them got killed.
Can I interrupt 1 second?
Of
Who's the
course.
Mashkiach for the Greenbaum event?
Greenbaum.
Yeah, he had a kiddish year.
Yeah,
Oh,
must be Zev.
either Zev or or Greg.
Okay, but we don't
Who
know.
did it? Lisa.
Lisa Garapi.
You can ask.
I just don't have.
You can ask her. I think there was one time that Connie had to come in, but that was for Maytal. Just ask her; she'll remember.
Maytal for her desserts because she hasn't paid us yet. Oh, I thought Zeb did Maytal.
No, that was a big thing, but Connie did something small, and I
okay.
told her we're not charging. She had to come in again, and she was all upset. The whatever about it. So I just told her Connie will come in. And
Okay.
I didn't charge her.
All right. Okay.
Where, by the way, they should be contacting you about booking a bar mitzvah, but they haven't contacted it yet. Maytal, Vayetze. Well, hopefully, Rabbi Wolf is trying to get her to do it here. So.
Well, she's not there.
Right, but I'm saying, but whatever. She is or she isn't? She is.
Yeah.
Oh, really? Excellent. So good. But anyway, so Rabbi Wolf is trying to get her to do a proper Shabbos bar mitzvah.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can. He specifically suggested to her that she do it here. So you can mention that to your compatriot. It might make him feel a little bit better.
Okay. All right.
He's trying.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So at any rate, where we were was that that back then they used to concentrate more on Gemara in Hungary, but he and not only did he learn Tanakh, he learned his Hebrew grammar. He was an expert in diktuk, and his poetry demonstrates this.
So how did he get to be expert in grammar? He taught himself.
Yeah, from books, from Sfarim. There are many books on Hebrew grammar.
Yeah.
He taught himself. He was an autodidact. He taught himself. When he came here, he spoke Hebrew. He spoke Hebrew, Yiddish, Hungarian, Czech, Romanian, a little bit of Russian, German very fluently, but he didn't speak English, and he taught himself English. You know how my Zayda taught himself English?
Listening to
No.
radio.
Well, listen to the radio, listen to the news, but you know how else he taught himself English? He with a dictionary in one hand and a Reader's Digest in the other. The Reader's Digest. He taught himself English with the Reader's Digest.
You mean by reading the Reader's
Yeah,
Digest?
with the dictionary in one hand and it has a lot of useful articles. It's very interesting. He had a wonderful library, but piled up in the closet like every Reader's Digest from 1952 on. He never threw one out. Anyways, but he was and you guys all have heard of Alan Dershowitz. So he was his Gemara teacher in Yeshiva Flatbush, briefly.
Really?
Yeah, he was a bad boy, Alan, wasn't very well behaved. But
has that changed?
Well, Alan has become very close to Chabad. And I've
What?
shared a podium, yes,
Recently?
last 20 years.
Really?
Since Rabbi Zarchi came to Harvard.
Why?
And he liked what Chabad was doing for the kids. He saw that he was connecting kids with their Judaism. But I've shared a platform with a podium with him for legal symposiums at least a half dozen times. He's a great partner. And he knows some Jewish, he knows some Torah too. So he's an interesting guy to be with.
He studied with him.
Micha.
George Fox.
Yeah. So right. So anyway. Yeah. Yeah.
He was
so,
thrown out.
Yes, he was a troublemaker, but I don't. He was a troublemaker. Anyways, but be that as it may, my Zayda was a very interesting person. And
you remember him?
Oh, you kidding? I grew up with him. I lived in his house. Yeah. When my Zayda was born in 1915 and passed away in, I think, 2007. Which, yeah. So I was already in my 40s when he passed away. That's 90 years.
17?
He was in 2007. That's 92 years. 1915 to 2007 is 92 years.
2007, my wife passed away.
Yeah. At any rate, and he was the second one to learn Gemara with me. Yeah, he was a very interesting person. And his poetry is amazing. I'm going to Tzvi Yair. Yes, I'm gonna do a class on his poetry at some point.
Was he a Chabadnik himself?
Yes, but late in life, he's a convert. He started life as a Vishnutcher Chassid. Then he went on to become a member of Mizrahi.
Yeah,
he was very active in the religious. Yeah, and then he got involved. He got involved with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I'll tell you. We don't have time now. I'll tell you the story another time. He wandered into a Farbrengen and never left, in a sense. Yeah. But nevertheless, he always sang Maoz Tzor and Chanukah.
I used to listen occasionally to the Farbrengen when they had them on TV.
Yeah, yeah. Then
the Rebbe was talking, and I couldn't make out this Yiddish.
It's a Russian Yiddish. Okay, let's do a little bit more. Anyways, they got sidetracked. So anyway, he didn't need the Torah, or he knew Tanakh backwards and forwards. So the Gemara now wants to know what's the difference between Havinenu and a short prayer. So the answer is Havinenu. When you say this middle prayer that includes a condensed version of the 13 middle blessings, you have to say the first three, Magen Avram Achaya Meitim and Ata Kadosh, the Gimel Batraisa, and the last three, which is Havinenu. We learned there's a bracha that is a condensed version of all the 13 middle ones. Right. So you have to say the first three and last three. Ritzei, Modim, and Mashim Shalom. V'chimoti levese. And secondly, when you get to your house, lo boy l'mahader l'tzlos, you don't have to pray again, the full prayer. It's good enough. But tefillah ktsar with the short 2-line prayer, lo boy l'tzlo, you don't have to do not the first three and not the last three. But the chimot lebesi, you get back home and still before midday, still before chatzot, boy l'mahader l'tzlo, you have to go back and pray. The hilchos of the halacha is Havinenu, you say ma'umad. Havinenu, you say standing. Tefillah Ketzara, the short prayer, you can say whether standing or riding or riding.
Or walking.
Or walking. Right, you don't have to stop. Mahalach means going in any particular way. And we're going. No, so now we're going to stop. We're going to learn about riding on donkeys and davening later. Right. But of course, the advantage, as I mentioned the other day, the advantage of a donkey or a horse is that it has full intelligent cruise control, its own navigation. It does everything. It stops for you. And, the modern cars can do almost what a horse can do.
What?
A horse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can do what?
A horse will stop if it sees something in front of it. A horse will avoid obstacles. You can fall asleep on a horse. You can't do that with a car.
Horses like the milkman they used to have.
Yeah.
You didn't have to say go.
Right. The milkman knew the road. At any rate, but we're going to see that you don't have to face Yerushalayim. And we're going to learn about that Be'ezras Hashem tomorrow. Next, it'll be in the email, but not this week. But next Tuesday, we're not learning. We're switching Tuesday out, and we're not learning Tuesday. I think Tuesday and Wednesday.
Why?
I'm going to send it out because I have to go somewhere Tuesday in the morning. In other words, my day off.
Not tomorrow,
No, not tomorrow. Tomorrow is regular. I'm giving you a heads up. In 8 days,
a week later.
yeah, a week later, we're not going to learn Tuesday, but we'll learn Wednesday. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful day. Michal, Mazel Tov.
Mazel tov.
Lots and lots of Yiddish and Hasidish and Nachas.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Have a nice day,
Oh,
everyone.
Natalie, sorry, I
Good
didn't
day.
notice you were on. Have a good day, Natalie.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, you also